Alright everybody, welcome back to B Mother Reviews. As you can see beside me here is the Magneto Maquette from Sideshow Collectibles. Magneto, ultra popular character, but this statue got off to a little bit of a rocky start, a little bit of a controversial start. So we're going to take a look into that. We're also going to ask the question, is this statue overpriced or underrated? So join me for the review and let's find out. Okay guys, thanks for joining me here. And I mentioned off the top that this statue got off to a little bit of a rocky start. And I can remember back to when it was kind of first revealed. There was an episode of Sideshow Live and William Harbottle was on the show. And he's their ace sculptor, and he's the sculptor who did most of this statue. And just on the table beside him during this episode was a little Magneto helmet. And they didn't say anything about it, and they didn't acknowledge it in any way, but took collectors, about 2 seconds to catch that hint because they were jacked up. They went into a frenzy. Oh my God, Sideshow is doing a Magneto, finally a 1/4 Magneto from Sideshow. Now this is kind of on the heels of XM Studios, very successful Magneto on the throne. There's a few fan art statues of Magneto floating around that look pretty nice as well. So I mean the appetite for Magneto was kind of fever pitch. And here comes the industry juggernaut, Sideshow Collectibles, and they're going to throw their hat in the ring here and try their hand at the master of magnetism. Now, so collectors were jacked up, as I said. Then comes along San Diego Comic-Con 2017, and they're going to make the big reveal. People were getting jacked. This is the premiere event for Sideshow. They reveal the Magneto premium format figure, and it kind of fell flat. Collectors weren't really excited with what they saw. It was very similar to what you see here, but with some very important differences, I'd say. Number one, they changed the belt. The belt was different. The collar was different. The collar around his cape, it just didn't look right. They gave it kind of a flared shoulder look, and it just didn't look quite right. The helmet, it looked, I don't know what was different about it. It kind of came down a little further, I think. Had a little bit of a taper to it. It looked kind of like he was wearing a bucket. It didn't look very good. His arm was different. Instead of doing this, instead of, this is power, right? This is intensity. His hand was like this. And this just doesn't look as powerful to me. It looks just kind of so-so, right? So a lot of changes, or a lot of differences between that initial reveal and what we see here. So Sideshow, very uncharacteristically took the statue back into development and made the changes that I just discussed. And they also added to the base. All these spikes, this metal kind of being pulled off the Sentinel head, those weren't there initially either, and they were added to the piece. So added a little bit of complexity. They also beefed him up a little bit, I think, especially through the abs area, kind of defined those muscles a little bit because, people were saying he looked too skinny, he didn't look strong enough. So they tweaked the piece quite a bit, actually. And in doing so, changed the name from premium format figure to Maquette. And we all know that in the language of Sideshow Collectibles, Maquette translates to mo money. The price of this piece just went up at least 100, maybe 150 bucks at that time, just by changing that name. And so that left a little bit of a bitter taste in the mouths of a lot of collectors. So this statue wasn't initially very well received. Even when they made the changes, people were still upset because of that seemingly uncalled for price increase. Now, all that said, that's in the past. This statue's been out for a while now, and I'm going to tell you what I think are the 3 best things about this statue. So we're going to count it down right now. Alright guys, before we kick things off at number 3 on the countdown, you'll notice that I switched up the portrait. This is the exclusive switch out unmasked portrait for Magneto. And it really shows off that long, luxurious, thick, flowing mane of silver hair that Magneto is really known for. And, you know, I don't think I'm going to be so lucky, but I think we can all hope that we have a head of hair like this as we get older, like Magneto. So there you have it. There's the exclusive portrait. Now, jumping into the countdown at number 3, I'm going to echo a lot of what I said about the recent review I did for the Prime 1 Studio Hush Superman and his fabric cape. And at number 3, I'm going to put the cape. You know, typically I prefer a sculpted cape on my statues, but there is some tangible benefits to having a fabric cape. Now, there's a couple of things I like about this one in particular. I do like the fabric that they use. It's a nice, thick, kind of textured fabric on the outside, and then on the inside you have that shiny, kind of satiny type of fabric, and that two-tone purple really defines the inside and outside of the cape. Looks really, really good, and as I said, the fabric looks and feels really nice. So great fabric choice there. And the second benefit is that you can shape it and pose it any way you want, and that's what makes fabric capes kind of cool, is that every display on a collector's shelf is going to look different. And there's never going to be two statues that have the same cape pose. And this posing system is really nice. Now, typically in a cape, you're going to get a round metal wire sewn into the edges, and you shape that as you will. Now, this cape has kind of, instead of that round wire, you get sort of a flat metal strip. It's a thin, flat strip, and I found that a lot easier to pose and reshape, and without getting those kinks that you get in the hard round wire. So really nice, flexible wire system that makes it nice and easy to pose this. So you get that strip all around the edges, around the entire perimeter, and then you also get 3 extra strips down about the quarter points of the cape through the middle on the back that give you that extra posing flexibility. So I really like this cape a lot. As I said, no two poses are going to be the same. I mean, for me, I tried to follow the flow of the base, like everything's kind of flowing this direction to his right, so I tried to follow that. And because I kind of imagine sort of this whirlwind of energy around him. So that's what I tried to go for. But I've seen people kind of do it all crazy out to the back or out to his left or both or whatever, and it looks good so many different ways. So that's what I think is really cool about fabric capes, and this fabric cape is especially good. All right, so at number 2 on the countdown, I'm going to put the base. I really like what they've done here. And what's interesting about this base is that it was actually sculpted initially by Marco Plouffe, and you would recognize some of his works with other companies. He just did the new Medieval Batman for Prime 1 Studio. He did the Shogun Batman for XM Studios. He did the new Punisher for Sideshow, the Skullface Punisher. And he also worked on the Sentinel bases for the new X-Men line. Now, I talked to Marco about this, and he said that he actually modeled the entire Sentinel. It was this big, glorious, full-bodied, intact Sentinel robot, and Sideshow took that and cut it up into pieces and smashed it up and used it as the basis for Wolverine, X-23, and also this Magneto here. And you can see they've really smashed this head of the Sentinel up, but that really, I think, accentuates and adds to the story that this piece is telling. You can see that the head of this Sentinel is basically crumpled up like a tin can. It's really being crushed by the power, the sheer power of Magneto. Only he could do this to a Sentinel robot. And you can see he's like sucking the metal. He's pulling it right off the head here with these strands that kind of flow around the piece here. I mean, this is almost like pulling the skin or flaying the skin off a human body. That's what he's doing to the Sentinel here. So it's a great display of his powers. So it's telling a story, and it's also showing us what Magneto can do and what he's really known for. So this base here, it's awesome. I think it really adds to this piece. Okay, so before we finish off with number 1 on the countdown here, couple critiques I have on this piece. First of all, the fit of some of the parts, and you'll notice just, they fit a little bit loose into the base. These pieces here and the gauntlets, which are separate pieces that attach with magnets, just a little bit loose fitting. And it's not a big deal. It's not like they're going to fall off the statue or anything like that. They're secure, but I like to have that snappy, kind of tight, secure fit on my statues. When the magnet almost pulls the piece right out of your hand and like sucks it right onto the statue. And you don't quite get that on this piece. So not a big deal, but I think that's probably worth noting. Second of all is the paint. And it's really just the paint finishes. I like the colors that they used on the statue. I like the helmet actually. I didn't think that I would, but the red that they used, it's different than the rest of the costume, so it stands out. It's got a little bit of a metallic sparkle to it, so I think the finish on the helmet is actually pretty good. What I'm talking about is the cleanliness of the paint job, we'll say. It's a little sloppy in places. You'll notice the trims on the helmet, a little bit of red onto the purple that shouldn't be there. Things like that. The skin tones are a little bit grayish, don't have a lot of life to them, and it's the same on the exclusive portrait here. Just that gray sort of skin tone. And it's something that Sideshow's been doing on their statues lately. Wolverine I found to be like that. Daredevil I found to be like that. Now Magneto's an older dude, so maybe it works better for him, but still I think there could have been more realism and more life added into the skin tones. And then finally the teeth. Now for me, the mouth is really the source of the life in the statue, in any statue. And a realistic, well done mouth and teeth, I think can just really add a lot. For me, like I said, it's the source of intensity, the character, the life of the statue. And there's nothing really wrong with these teeth. They don't really bring the statue down. I mean, it's a clean paint job in that area, but they don't elevate it either. They don't add that almost photorealism that some other statues have. And, not bad, but definitely not as good as it could have been. And definitely not as good as probably it should have been at this price range. It just could have been a little bit better. All right, now we have arrived at number 1 on the countdown. And for me, what I think is the best part about this statue has got to be the design, and specifically the pose. Now, to explain, let's take a trip down memory lane way back to 1991 when this book here dropped onto the comic book shelves. Now, first of all, who doesn't have a copy of this book in their collection somewhere? Now, second of all, grab yours, open it up to page 2, and take a look at this epic splash page from Jim Lee. I mean, for me, this has got to be the most iconic image of Magneto that I can think of. And when I first saw this statue, I immediately saw the similarities to this pose. So that really hit home for me. He's got the outstretched arm, the legs kind of spread apart, levitating in midair. I mean, look how they anchored it to the base with his right boot. His left boot is kind of suspended in air. It really gives that sense of flight, showcasing another one of his powers. And when you integrate that with the base and how he's pulling the metal off the Sentinel head and crushing it, you just get this almost ultimate showcase of Magneto. Now, one thing I have to say about the design that I don't quite like is on the suit. And for the most part, I like what they've done. They have modernized it by kind of ditching the purple undies on the outside. And that's fine. That's a modern trend. And I can take or leave the undies on the outside. But it's with the gloves and the boots. Now, since day one, like X-Men number 1, 1963, Magneto has had that banded red and purple banding on his gloves, on his boots. And he doesn't have that here. And it's kind of a curious choice for me because a lot of their current X-Men line really sticks pretty close to the comic book look. And this is kind of a big change because it's, as I said, it's kind of an iconic look that's been there since his creation. So I think if that had been added, it would have elevated the look of this piece even higher. But as it is, as I said, The execution is almost flawless. The showcase of his powers, the way he's interacting with the base, the power pose, the iconic kind of reference back to that X-Men #1 image that I showed you. I mean, as I said, almost flawless design on this piece. It really turned out amazing. All right, time to wrap up the review here. This is the Sideshow Collectibles Magneto Maquette. And I asked off the top of the review, is this statue underrated? And you know, you only get to make one first impression in life, and this statue's first impression really wasn't very good, as I said. It kind of stumbled out of the gates, and you know that initial feeling you get when you see a statue, it's tough to shake. So it was kind of an uphill battle for this piece right from day one. Now, as I said, I really love the cape for this piece. I love the base, how it tells a story, how the pose and the base kind of interact with each other to showcase his power set. I really think this is a well done Magneto, and it in my opinion, it is an underrated piece. Now, is it overpriced? That was the other question. When you look at this statue, it's priced at $750 US dollars. It came out before Rogue Maquette and also the Gambit Maquette, which are both priced at $700. And you look at those ones, and you know they look just as complex as this guy. They know just as challenging to engineer. I mean, Rogue's hanging off her hand, suspended in midair. Pretty complex piece, if you ask me. And they're cheaper than this guy, so you still kind of wonder, you know, did they give him the old Magneto price bump? Because as I said, I mean, Magneto, the appetite for the character has never been higher when this statue came out. So he might have got a little bit of a price bump there. I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, yeah, it probably is overpriced by, you know, maybe 50, between 50 and 100 bucks, let's say, for the time that it came out. But overall, I'm really satisfied with this statue. I think it came out pretty nice. It's got a few flaws here. The paint could have been better, but overall, I think it's a really nice rendition of one of the more popular characters in Marvel history, in Magneto. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Stay tuned to the channel. I got tons coming. I got boxes and boxes in the next room there. We're going to do some unboxings. We're going to do some reviews. So tons of content coming for the channel. Stay tuned, and we'll talk to you guys soon.